Hey budget nerds! When it comes to traveling, I actually look forward to getting away from technology and from the internet. I know, not very nerdy of me. But for those that just can't, or for those that travel a lot for work, maybe a travel router is in your future. This is the Beryl Travel Router from GL-iNet, GL-iNet, I don't know. They sent it over to check out, so let's do just that. Now, before we go over why you would or wouldn't want a travel router, let's quickly check out what you get with this one. In the box, there's a quick start guide, and that's about it as far as instructions go. I wish they had an actual manual, but there is documentation on the internet. Here's the router. It's pretty small and feels well built. It has 2 antennas, and it pretty much fits in the palm of my hand. On the left side, you get a mode switch and a reset button. On the other side, you get a micro SD card slot, which will accept up to 512 gigabytes, but I hear it's not hot swappable. On the back, you have a WAN port, which you can actually switch to a LAN port if you want. 2 LAN ports, a USB 3.0 port, which is nice, and a USB-C power port. The gray color is cool, and it's a very sleek and understated look it has. Finishing off the box, you also get an Ethernet cable and the power adapter. Now, if you're asking yourself, why would I want a travel router? Then maybe you don't need one. But let's quickly go over what a travel router could add to your traveling experience. You connect this router to your hotel Wi-Fi, for example, and then you can connect your devices to the travel router's own Wi-Fi network. You can control what devices get on, create your own Wi-Fi password, set your own Wi-Fi settings, etc. You can easily share your 3G or 4G connection while on the go. Have a small wired printer or other wired device you take with you. A travel router like this would allow you to hook up wired devices to your own little local area network. If you love messing with settings in your home router to fine-tune and control devices, you can take most of that with you on the road. When connected to hotel Wi-Fi, for example, any router would hide your devices from the hotel's network, but will still share the hotel's internet with those devices. But Beryl offers a bit more. It runs on OpenWRT, has built-in features to set up and enable VPN, Tor, and DNS encryption. These are pretty neat additions, and make some sense for a travel router. Well, right away, I connected the router to my Wi-Fi, and then connected my laptop to it. After all, this is what most people will be doing with this on the road. It worked well. I had no issues. Next, I hooked it up in my house as my main router, and while I don't recommend it as your main router, it did work fine, except for gaming. There were lag issues when my son played Fortnite. It doesn't quite have the horsepower for that. After you connect to the router, you can hit up the settings in a web browser by going to 192.168.8.1. You get the typical router info, including how many devices are connected to the router. It'll show you the WAN info if you have a WAN cable connected. Under wireless, you can configure the wireless name, password, amongst other options, toggle different bands, and toggle the guest network. Under clients, you can see what devices are connected to the router, along with its basic info. You can block devices, and that's about it. Upgrade lets you upgrade the firmware on the router. Firewall lets you set up port forwarding, open ports on the router, or set up DMZ. VPN lets you set up a VPN client or VPN server on the router. Your VPN provider should give you some config files for routers you can easily upload to the router. I tried it with Proton VPN and it worked fine. You also get support for WireGuard and Tor. A feature of OpenWRT, I assume, is plugins. You can see what plugins are installed and can apparently uninstall them. The list is pretty long, however these plugins are pretty small and contribute to the main functions of the router. It's cool that you can customize it to this extent. If you're not sure what you're looking at, then just leave this stuff alone. Files sharing will let you share storage from the USB drive, although I couldn't figure out how to access it. Turns out some pretty nerdy configuring may need to be done to get it to work with Samba 2.0. Unless you're a pretty huge nerd, then you might not be able to rely on it working out of the box. With the good cloud service, you can remotely manage the router, and dynamic DNS is something that is also supported. You can enable a captive portal for the guest network, and lastly, under settings, you can change the LAN IP settings, change or clone the router's MAC address, enable or disable IPv6, set up custom DNS addresses, change what the mode switch does on the side of the router, which is kind of cool, and you can change the network mode the router is in. For example, you can use it as a router, access point, repeater, or in a wireless distribution system. When in repeater mode, I still got pretty good speeds. I normally get around 270 megabits per second. As far as coverage goes, it's decent, but not as strong as your typical home router. This, of course, is perfectly acceptable, but nice to see what it'll do regardless. As far as negatives go, besides the USB storage thing, the parental controls were pretty lacking. I don't knock it too much for this, but if a family wants to use this on the road or anywhere for any reason, parental controls might be good to have. There's also no WPA3 here, which, again, is also hard to knock it for considering the price point. All in all, it's a pretty decent little router. Not everyone will need a travel router, but for those that do, this one seems like a good option. Let us know in the comments why you would use a travel router if you do, and thanks for watching.